When a disaster hits, what's our first instinct? It's to help, right? It's this deep human impulse. We see the devastation, we see families in need, and we just want to do something to make it better. And for decades, that impulse led to a really simple response: ship in aid. Food, supplies, shelter. But what if that rush to help, that very first instinct, could sometimes make things worse? Let's dig into how a simple shift in thinking is completely revolutionizing disaster response.
Okay, picture this. You're in Haiti, it's 2008. A series of tropical storms has just ripped through the country. I mean, it's absolute chaos. Roads have literally vanished under mudslides. Fields are just gone, swallowed by floodwater. And you have entire communities that are totally isolated, cut off from the food and supplies they need just to survive. The need for help is massive, and it's urgent.
So imagine you're an aid worker on the ground. You see the desperation. People are hungry. They've lost everything. The question that every single person in that situation faces is, what is the single best way to help, right here, right now? The answer seems so obvious, but as we're about to find out, it's anything but simple.
So, let's first take a look at the conventional response. The way things have been done for decades. The traditional playbook is pretty clear. A crisis hits, you mobilize resources from the outside, and you hand them out directly to the people who need them. Food, water, medicine, building materials. Get them there as fast as you can. It feels direct, it feels tangible. But here's the hidden danger. By completely ignoring the local economy, this approach can accidentally crush the very systems people will need to recover in the long run.
And this brings us to a huge shift in thinking, a whole new approach that can build a stronger recovery. It's all about adopting a market mindset. This slide really lays out the two different philosophies perfectly. On the one hand, you have direct distribution. Sure, it's fast, but it often bypasses local shops and traders, basically undercutting them and creating dependency. But on the other hand, you have market support. This approach asks a different question. What if we worked with the local market? The whole goal here is to strengthen the systems that are already there, empower local businesses, and help promote a faster, more sustainable recovery.
Okay, to make this really concrete, let's jump back to Haiti. In Haiti, beans aren't just food. They're a cultural staple. They're part of daily life. So naturally, after the floods, the big plan for a lot of aid agencies was to start importing massive amounts of beans from other countries. But before they pulled the trigger, some folks on the ground decided to take a closer look at the local bean market. And you know what? What they found changed everything. And here it is. This is the big aha moment. Everyone assumed it was an availability problem, that the beans just weren't in the country anymore. But the real problem was access. The beans were there. Wholesalers still had them in stock. Farmers in other parts of the country were still harvesting. The market was definitely strained, but it wasn't broken. The real issues were that the roads were washed out and people had no money to buy anything.
So, armed with this crucial insight, the whole response shifted. Instead of importing beans, which could have bankrupted local farmers and traders, agencies started using market-stimulating aid. What does that mean? Well, it meant giving families cash so they could go buy beans from their local vendors. It meant buying beans directly from Haitian traders to keep their businesses going. Suddenly, aid wasn't just about handing out food, it was about protecting livelihoods and boosting the local economy.
Now, this new way of thinking is incredibly powerful, but you can't just wing it. You need a specific set of tools to actually put it into practice, especially under the insane pressure of a crisis.
And that tool has a name: EMMA. It stands for Emergency Market Mapping and Analysis. It was developed for one specific reason: to help humanitarian teams make these kinds of smarter, market-aware decisions in those critical first few weeks of a disaster. Now, EMMA isn't for economists sitting in some quiet office. It's a tool built for the people on the front lines, the generalists who need practical guidance, not some dense academic theory. Its goal isn't to get perfect data. It's to get good enough answers and get them fast to guide urgent decisions in that chaotic window right after a disaster hits. So how's it work? Well, EMMA is built around 4 really logical steps. First up, gap analysis. What do people actually need right now? Then, baseline mapping. What did this market look like before the crisis? Third is emergency mapping. Okay, what exactly did the disaster do to that market system? And finally, response analysis. Based on all that info, what's our best move? Should we give people cash? Should we distribute physical items, what's called in-kind aid? Or is there an even better option? It's a super clear process to get you from problem to solution.
So this all sounds great in theory, right? But trying to implement this market mindset runs into a really big, real-world obstacle: the culture of the aid industry itself. For that, let's take a look at Nepal. In 2015, these devastating earthquakes hit Nepal, leaving just widespread destruction. As the immediate emergency response started to wind down, the focus shifted to long-term recovery. And this image really just shows the monumental challenge that communities face when they're trying to rebuild their lives and their livelihoods from the ground up. So there was a program called Samarth that was already on the ground, and they started using market analysis to figure out the smartest way to help farmers get back on their feet. But they quickly found out that having good data wasn't enough. The biggest hurdle was trying to convince a humanitarian system that's built for speed and direct delivery to just slow down for a second and work differently. And this quote from the Samarth report just hits the nail on the head. Basically, while everyone talks about doing no harm and supporting local markets, the pressure to act fast and show results, pictures of trucks unloading supplies, often leads agencies to just fall back on what they know. Direct distribution. It's just the path of least resistance, even if it's not the most effective one. Let's look at a really specific example from their analysis of Nepal's dairy market. The impact of the earthquake was clear. Chilling centers were damaged, demand for milk dropped like a rock, and the cattle were suffering. The old-school, tried-and-tested response would be to just start handing out animal feed. But a market-led response, which you see on the right, is so much smarter. Why not partner with the dairy companies that are already there to get feed to farmers? Their milk trucks are already driving into these communities, often empty on the way in. It's just a more efficient way to leverage a system that already exists. So what does this all mean for the future? How do we actually move from just having smart analysis to making this the standard way of doing things? Well, Emma and this market mindset aren't just for what happens after a disaster. This whole way of thinking is evolving. Now there are tools for pre-crisis market analysis, or PCMA. And the idea there is to understand a market's weak spots and strengths before a shock ever hits, so we can help build more resilient systems from the very beginning. It's a huge shift from being reactive to being proactive. This roadmap really shows how the entire aid community can get smarter. It's about deliberately bringing local businesses into the planning stages, actively looking for ways to work with them, and building those relationships long before the next crisis hits. At the end of the day, this isn't just about adopting a new tool. It's about fundamentally changing how aid agencies see their role, from being direct providers to being facilitators of a local recovery.
And that brings us to our final question. And it's a big one that challenges our most basic ideas about what it means to help. When we see a crisis and we feel that powerful human urge to rush in and do something, are we really helping people get back on their feet? Or are we, with the best intentions in the world, sometimes just getting in their way?